but we've built a platform and it's kind of a tech-enabled service called FreightSOS.
The trucking industry is crazy right now, and being a broker can be stressful. Managing your invoices, billing, collecting, carrier base, and cash flow can feel like an impossible task. But I can tell you, OTR Solutions has figured out the impossible. They eliminate cash flow problems for carrier payments and ensure margin funding in just 24 hours with broker invoice factoring. OTR Solutions takes care of billing and collection processes with your shippers. And with lightning quick and accurate invoicing, your customers will never need another broker to handle their freight needs. Kick back, relax, and let OTR take care of your brokerage. If you want to know more, and I hope you do, check them out at otrsolutions.com/freight-caviar to see what they can do for your business. Or give them a call. They love to talk to brokers at 770-882-0124. We've partnered with Ascend TMS, the world's most popular and top-rated transportation management system. It's the ultimate tool for all your freight needs. You can use our referral code RA-FreightCaviar! To receive 3 months of Ascend TMS for free. It only takes 20 seconds to sign up and no credit card is required. You can click the link below to learn more. Adam, welcome to our podcast. To start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the freight industry?
Yeah, appreciate it. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, so I started DeGroot Logistics in July of 2013. So we just celebrated a 10-year anniversary recently. Wow. But we're 3PL. We focus pretty heavily on the food and beverage sectors. Historically, a lot of refrigerated truckload. We do that. That mix has kind of changed over time. But yeah, we're specialists in the perishable space. So what got us into that business? My background's actually in the produce industry. So I grew up on a vegetable and grain farm in central Illinois, St. Anne, Illinois, DeGroot's Vegetable Farms. Been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. There's kind of a debate in the family on when it really started. But yeah, we've been growing vegetables since the early 70s there. And that's kind of what I grew up in, the environment.
That's really cool.
What kind of vegetables was it, like, mostly?
Yeah, the main commodity is potatoes. So we're growing potatoes primarily for processing markets, but also fresh markets as well. But then also cabbage, hot and sweet peppers, growing different squash varieties. So yeah, we farm a little bit in southern Georgia as well, but main HQ in Illinois. So
very cool. And before we started recording, Adam, you mentioned that you used to do mostly just straight from like the farm to like the consumer kind of like market. I guess, what is it called? Like fresh fruit and vegetable market. And then you changed to mostly doing processing or selling to processing centers. How did that, were you part of that change? Like, were you working with vegetables and farm back then?
So we started the vegetable side of the business in the early 70s. Before that, be my grandfather, my great grandfather. The area was predominantly like gladiola production. So it was like flowers and so it's that region just north of St. Anne, Illinois, historically a lot of Dutch family farms. Mm-hmm. So early 70s, my father and uncle started growing vegetables. It was like 40 or 50 different commodities at that time. And yeah, like you mentioned, it was a farm stand, really. People come from Chicago, from all over. And it was a U-pick operation. That was back when, people would you get consumers to go out in the field, pick their own stuff, basically. So that's coming back. Oh, wow. It's kind of agritourism, more for fun, I think, for some reason. But yeah, so it started as that farm stand kind of evolved into a truck farm servicing like Chicago in general. And yeah, from there, through the 80s, early 90s, it was just that slow kind of consolidation of the number of items and kind of just efficiencies are gained around that. So early 90s, 1992 was the first crop of potatoes in St. Anne. We're growing shipping potatoes and it was more mechanized. Part of that was just labor availability. That's just, continued till today. It's increasingly difficult, but, we really shifted that, the mindset. Now we do a few, half a dozen or so items, but I kind of entered, in the 90s, I was working on a potato grading line, picking crap, corn stalks and rocks out of potatoes, basically. But, I really, so I went to Loyola University, graduated in 2010, and came back and took over the vegetable sales piece of the family business then. So, really, my through that kind of high school and college period, my side hustle, it's kind of main hustle actually, was selling at farmers markets around Chicago. As soon as I got my driver's license, wanted to get off the potato grading line, started hustling produce around. Had kind of the week filled out, did six markets a week, and that was kind of my first experience really on the sales in any sort of like sales capacity. And I loved it. Always had kind of a love for commodity markets, and it's been kind of the appreciation for transportation markets started to grow, I guess.
Did you make good
So
money
you said you got
as on the side hustle?
It was a cash business, so those are always fun. It was like 14 weeks a year, like it was like the summer season, and it was like ball busting. It's like 95 hours a week. It was crazy, but it was so it was like impossible to spend money when you're working that much.
Yeah.
But it was a good that was kind of put a grub stake together for future endeavors. Yeah.
Most people wouldn't understand what a 95-hour a week looks like right now. I feel like,
No.
they'd be like, no, thank you. I need life.
Well, the best part about that, like Adam said, is that you don't have time to spend money, so you're literally just saving money. So
banking it all. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yep.
Listen, so the people that are listening to this, listen to this, because that's the only way to make money and save money. It's a hustle to the point where you can't spend it.
Yeah.
Until then, you want to relax and chill. But
so
you said
yeah.
Sorry.
Adam, so you said you got your license, and then was it like a CDL and you started driving a truck?
It was a driver's license. I had a straight truck, like a 24-foot box truck.
Okay.
And, it was kind of this, we were like 50, 60 miles from, most from Chicago. That's where we're located. So, some funny stories there around, there was like a farm to market exclusion for CDLs that wasn't actually appropriate in this case. And I thought it was. So, first run in, eventually, I'm on my way to a market and I get pulled over to the way station on 57, and they're like, "Can I see your CDL medical card?" I'm like, "No, I'm just farmer going to sell stuff." Like, they're like, "Yeah, that's just like a much tighter, radius. That's like going down the street, So that was my first kind of run in with the DOT, I guess. But
did they put you out of service, or did they?
No, he was was a polite officer on duty that day, so he let me head back to the shipper, basically back to the farm.
That's at least good. He was probably like, "Man, this guy works 95 hours a week. We should just probably let him go."
Right. I look tired, probably.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, so did that that was through like, high school, college, graduated from Loyola, like I said, 2010, came back, took over the vegetable sales piece and really started a produce brokerage operation then too. So that was really kind of the next step in that kind of evolution towards logistics. Really, we're a seasonal farm. We're in Illinois. We get a pretty tight window. A lot of the customers we worked with wanted year-round product, and so started building year-round programs, sourcing from different states, and kind of got in some new commodities that we didn't grow, kind of cross-selling opportunities with our customer base. And that was really the, being a produce broker who's also a farmer. I think there's a lot of, I guess, just appreciation for what goes into it and just the unit economics of farming and production agriculture. So we understand that pretty intimately. So as that business grew, over the ensuing couple of years, we went from shipping, out of one location, few months a year, to all over the place, needing spot service, and that was really, kind of set the stage for us getting a logistics business. My career on the truck, like just, sourcing to carrier procurement, if you will, on our farm started in 2010, and leading up to the founding in 2013. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was like rates kind of bottomed post Great Recession.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it's like, my kind of, historical bearings there were like, oh yeah, vans $1 a mile, reefers under $2 a mile, So that was not, as time went on there, 2013, I think that was the first time I had seen reefer rates exceed like $3 a mile. Didn't know that could happen. that was, I just had a pretty short, history there. So, I remember it was like the spring, summer of 2013. I'm at our Bainbridge, Georgia, our seasonal potato shipping office trying to cover, we're shipping one of the cheapest commodities out there, bulk potatoes for processing and negotiating, nickel and diming, just trying to make it work off contracts. And I was like, well, this isn't, probably not sustainable. This is going to be the bottleneck, for the continued growth of businesses. So that was really the impetus behind founding DeGroot Logistics. We had the freight with the needs, and we really had this kind of core competency in, and that was essential. If you're a potato salesman or broker, you're a freight broker, who just happens to be throwing potatoes in the back of a truck too. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
So I had an early appreciation for that. That's how DeGroot Logistics got its start.
Hey there, amazing listeners. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on our podcast, we need your support. It will only take a moment, but it would mean the world to us. Please make sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to share with one of your friends that would enjoy our content. Your engagement helps us reach more people and bring more awesome episodes to you. Thanks a million, and thanks for being part of the podcast community.
So you essentially started DeGroot Logistics to handle your produce.
Yep, that was the first. We were kind of captive customer, so to speak. But
Cool.
but that produce focus and niche. A lot of our early trading partners there on the produce brokerage side were early customer shippers. Yep,
that's awesome. I actually was going to ask you about being a produce broker. Can you kind of explain to us who the first time I ever heard of a produce broker is when you mentioned it to me a few weeks ago. I don't know, if Bob, do you know what a produce broker is? Just can you explain to our audience what a produce broker does?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's pretty simple. It's maybe the simplest business model out there, for potatoes specifically, you're sourcing, you're working with farms, sourcing commodities from farms and working with customer shippers and, sometimes arranging a freight. Like we've always insisted on handling the transportation. We feel like that's kind of core to providing a high level of service and just doing it all in house, but sometimes not. They're shipper agents that just sell on an FOB just out of one location, but, really buying and selling commodities, commodity trading, perhaps the second oldest professions. I think it's referred to as, but that's really, it's as simple as that. There are, in the produce market specifically too, like the nuances and complexities. Like there's not like the potato market. There's so many subsets. There's different varieties. There's chipping potatoes. There's russet potatoes, yellow, and then each one of those just has a ton of different specifications too. So that's what's so, unique about farming. If you're growing peppers or you're growing whatever, you have to have, you don't know what your quality is going to be, the distribution of quality. You don't know what the size profile of the crop, the yield and all that. So you've got to have homes for all these different, potential scenarios. You got to have customers lined up and, it's just a lot on the fly. So anybody in the produce industry, especially on the farming side, is you're used to having backup plans and contingency plans, and you get a hailstorm that knocks out half a crop. You got to figure out there's just so many surprises and kind of externalities, I guess. But yeah.
Oh wow.
So I guess go ahead, Bob.
So Adam, a question. So when you're saying you buy produce and then I guess as a broker, you actually end up buying this produce from a farmer and then dealing with the rest of it, basically shipping it out to customer, or are you just providing the service for that specific, I guess, farm, if I'm understanding it correctly?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, it's not unlike, it's really a lot similar to the freight market, transportation market. There's contract business, there's spot business. In right now, like our farm, we're shipping cabbage, we're cutting cabbage. So we've got an array of different customers. You never really know until like you get a bumper crop, you need to move extra. You got to find, a home for it that you might not have contracted and planned for too. So there's a lot of short term, this kind of range of short and long term planning involved. But yeah, you buy it, take possession, and when it gets put on a truck, when we're picking up at a farm, we own that commodity, and when it's kind of unloaded off a truck, then POD signed, BOL's in good order, like then it's no longer ours, basically. Yep. So
okay, that's interesting.
That is, it's pretty cool. And
last thing I want to do is go inspire an army of produce brokers to go get into business. But that's all right.
But you
Yeah.
also, DeGroot also has their own assets. The farm does.
Yeah, we've got a small number of them, and service is really local. Yeah, just
From San
customers within a couple 200-300 miles. Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. Very cool. So you started DeGroot Logistics from like a need essentially to handle the produce that your farm was shipping. Can you kind of like tell us like how the beginnings looked like? You did say that a lot of your customers, original customers, were also like the customers or farms that you were helping on the produce side of the brokerage side.
Yeah. Sure.
How did that, how did DeGroot Logistics evolve? And this is the 10th year, so congrats to that. Can you
Yeah,
kind of
appreciate it.
take us through like the founding years and
Yeah.
how it looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a blur at this point, some of the early, but yeah, brought on a good friend of mine, college roommate. He's our COO today, Rob Rocheman. First couple years was us figuring out what the hell we were doing. We didn't have any sort of, training at a 3PL. We kind of came, just from first principles, really established our, how we're going to do business, our processes and all that. And we really, from the early days, like as I don't think the term digital brokerage existed maybe 10 years ago. Maybe it was starting to, but we really, from day one, would kind of proudly consider ourselves traditional brokers. We were bootstrapping it. We're a two-person company at that point. So it was all service oriented. And this isn't probably an uncommon story. There's a lot of great those kind of 3PL founding stories. Founders coming from the produce industry too. TQL, Ken Oaks, I think was in the produce business before, and there's dozens of others.
Also,
So
Alan Lund.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
He was at C.H. Robinson, but like they started doing a produce. But C.H. Robinson was
CH, I think that kind of not even a lot of people in the industry don't realize it. For the majority of their history, they're a very old company. The freight brokering part was a recent, phenomenon in that whole spend. Like they were a produce broker, for until like the 70s, I think, till the deregulation, my understanding in the 70s kind of happened. But yeah, so you're always kind of, and that's the reason, like you want to be competitive. These are very volatile, competitive markets. You need to, like, when I say we're kind of built for like spot market, like kind of service, short-term service, that's like hours or under 24 hours, you need trucks, you need to get a game plan together. And this is a very perishable commodity. That's kind of the joke in the industry. If you don't sell it, you smell it. So you're like, we're constantly like you're on the clock. So it's like, yeah, it keeps you sharp for sure. So we're kind of immersed in that from the early days, and really just applied that to the logistics world too. I think that's what we always joked about too, to kind of speak to the nuances of different commodities. Like our team, from the early days, like could tell you the difference between the number 3 and the number 4 tomato. And most people, there's a lot of freight brokers out there that probably haul a lot of tomatoes that don't, that might not know what that is too. So it's like there's just the specifications and everything that goes into it. There's so much tribal knowledge, and there's just and so you see that too in those kind of perishable commodities. Like there's tends to be, like most shippers, like there might be a preference to work with asset-based carriers, but when you have a huge portion of your plans that just are thrown together in a day or two, you really need to rely on freight brokers for a portion of your program too. So that was really our kind of how we positioned ourselves early on. So.
Okay.
And as time went on, too, fast forward to today, we've got 42, 44 people on the logistics team. It really, our selling language is continue. I'm kind of surprised. You'd asked me 10 years ago if we were going to be using similar pitches to really, pitch ourselves and position ourselves to like the largest of food shippers of America. I wouldn't have guessed it that it would, but it still resonates. It's still, if we understand, a lot of the kind of the unit economics or, of food manufacturing plants, and, just their plans change all the time too. So we've always tried to be that versatile kind of partner that they could depend on for quick service. But yeah, delays, if there's shipment delays with getting to factories, if plants are down, and that stuff gets pretty expensive. So we keep that in mind all the time for sure.
It seems like being in produce is a good gateway to become a great freight broker, just from like the point of view, like you're saying you're prepared for a lot of contingencies. There's a hailstorm, the same kind of thing when the truck breaks down or, something goes wrong in logistics. You're always prepared.
Yeah.
That's really, really neat. Bob, I'm wondering, do you ever do produce loads, Bob?
Yeah, we have one reefer that we run. So we're actually running a reefer right now from California to North Carolina. He's bringing produce back. I think it was like garlic and something else. I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Okay.
Picking up a Gilroy or something. Yeah.
What was that?
I was like probably picking up a Gilroy or somewhere around there.
Here, I could actually tell you because I can look it up and see. But yeah, we only run one. Honestly, reefers are so tough. I hate. Guess who we actually booked this load with? Paul.
Who's that?
Alan Lund.
Knight and Swift.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Too funny. It picked up actually in Colton, California. California. Produce freight.
How much it paid?
A lot. It paid 65.
Okay. So
it's coming to Henderson, North Carolina.
Okay. Got it. So this year overall, like what I've heard is that the produce has, I guess there's less produce than there was last year. Can you kind of talk to that point, Adam? Like, how has the produce market been this year overall?
I got out there for a second. You mind repeating that?
Yeah. So overall, I heard that like the produce market's doing a little bit worse this year in the sense that there's less produce to ship. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? I know there's been like some flooding that went on, and I think California that kind of affected it. But overall, how's it this year compared to last year?
Yes, some pretty historic flooding. That's hit some of the lettuce and other, those regions out west. And the potato market, which is pretty core to what we do. And it was a combination last crop year. So we're like in kind of the, I'd say like third inning, fourth inning, bottom of the third of like new crop, like potato harvest in the US.
Okay.
Really?
So only in the third inning?
Exactly. It's all the Southern guys have started pretty heavily, or have wrapped up rather, but we're like 2 weeks into our harvest in Illinois. Most of the acres are in the top quarter of the country.
Okay.
And, we're coming off a year where, there's a pretty substantial acreage decline out west, Idaho, Washington, Oregon. That's a little over half of the country's potatoes, basically.
Okay.
So they had one of their worst kind of yield. So this is probably the worst potato shortage or just supply disruption in quite some time in the U.S. So that's like potatoes are by acreage, by far the largest fruit or vegetable commodity in the U.S. So that's probably affected volumes too. But you're seeing too, I mean, that's kind of a theme we've operate off of for really most of the last year. The country's experienced a lot of inflation all over the economy. Food inflation is at times like led the way on that. And we're a country that, there's different estimates and guesses at it, but like we throw away 30 to 50% of the food we consume here. So you're in we're in a society, so with that kind of food waste and you get like 8 or 10% price increases every year, Americans stop buying food, like you don't need to, there's a lot of slack that probably can be eliminated. And I think that's what we ran into. It's not just a produce thing, but it was kind of a food industry phenomenon. And I mean, I could see a scenario where just given that fact, like there's so much food waste, there could be kind of a long-term, like we might not see substantially higher volumes for a decade, who knows? Like that might be an extreme example, but again, like I think that's what, we're looking at is for volumes to kind of resume that uptrend, and you need to see prices kind of get in line. If there's consistent, the American shoppers, consumers, they're not going to keep buying more volume if prices keep going up,
Yeah, definitely.
I think HelloFresh is changing that thing, where it's like we're throwing out so much stuff. I don't know if you guys heard of HelloFresh or not, but basically you order a box for sure. And they send you exactly what you need. Because when I go to the store and I decide to cook, which I never do, but I have so much extra leftovers, but when HelloFresh it just comes and they specifically send you exactly what you need. So they'll send you one potato for that specific meal. They'll send you this. So hopefully that will eliminate and change some things. But yeah, then I had a couple of questions about the potatoes. So all the potatoes are basically shipped in bulk, right? They don't usually palletize or anything like that. They just throw it into the trailer.
what we do, for our business primarily is a lot more on the processing side, but there's, most of them I think are packaged that are going to like retail distribution centers stuff. So, they're repackaged potato packing sheds. There's kind of different parts of the
Oh,
market.
okay.
There's a lot of growers that, just grow chip potatoes, and like those will go bulk loose in a trailer
Oh, okay.
directly
Yeah.
to a plant, unloaded bulk. Like French fries, like most of those are the potatoes go to the plant, same thing, bulk. A lot of the production is around where those manufacturing plants are too. So there might not be not a lot of miles on those. So it might not be like a long haul, considered a long haul deal. But yeah, I don't know the percentage exactly. I do think it's a little under half, but the retail, like food service, like packaged stuff. So yeah, that's all
Okay.
palletized.
And
Yeah.
then I heard that North Carolina is one of the biggest sweet potato state
Yeah.
to ship out, or not ship out, I guess grow
Produce.
sweet potatoes. Is that true?
Yeah, it's like I think half the country's acres or something like that. Yep.
Oh, dang.
Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
That's
So,
what we're known
so
for,
you see,
Paul.
so yeah, that's right. That's what's kind of interesting. In the produce world, you get, there's just such tight concentration in some areas for certain commodities. So like weather events, like they're in the line of every 2 or 3 years, a hurricane hits dead center, when the
Yeah.
crop's in
Yeah.
production too. So you get those kind of situations all the time. But yeah, I think there's certain commodities that, you talk about like produce demand in general. We're importing more. We import a lot from Mexico and Central America. That's got more miles on it, so there's more to transport, technically. But that's changing too. I think you're starting to see like Mexico, in general, their costs are going up. All the near shoring,
Mhm.
trend that's happening, a lot more happening there. So that's something that's kind of a prognosis that a premise we're kind of operating off to. You'll see our the kind of the relative cost advantage that Mexico has to produce more cheaply for produce,
Yep.
will kind of shrink with the US potentially. So yeah, that could lead more production back here. We're growing more. There's certain programs in Illinois we're trying to expand quite a bit, but yeah, it's that one kind of monolithic produce market. It's just dozens of different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
different markets.
Definitely.
So question, when it gets like super, because I feel like in produce, it's right, it could be like slow. And then once harvest starts, it's super like a big demand and you need a bunch of reefers to go and pick all this stuff up. Do you guys ever like when you have moments like that, do you guys ever like co-broker or reach out to other brokers and then try to work together to move all this freight, or how does that work? Or you specifically try to find all the
Yeah.
trucks
Our
yourself?
logistics, and we don't co-broker at all. Our farm has had relationships with other 3PLs in the past for sure, but DeGroot
Okay.
Logistics, we wouldn't ever do that. Yep. Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
makes
Got
sense.
it. So
Yep.
I'm actually wondering, Adam, because we used to work with Shears Stack Foods
Mhm.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And that was one of our largest customers, the brokerage I worked for. And they ended up giving us a huge contract, basically just shipping bulk potatoes from northern Florida, southern Georgia to Ohio, like near Cleveland, I think Canton, Ohio, or Akron, Ohio is where their plant was. And we won this contract and we began shipping, I think, in like May or April. And it went like south real quick where
Mhm.
like, I don't know, I guess we were shipping like probably 10 truckloads a day. And like
Yep.
one or two of them would be completely rejected.
Yeah.
And there'd be a lot of, rejected product. Getting like the vented vans was difficult. And just like, they would pay us
Mhm.
depending on the weight that was hauled. And there's obviously a lot of nuances that goes into like being a broker for like a produce farm. What do you do to like handle that? Like, how are you more on top of it? Because obviously, like we weren't specialists at produce shipping. We actually ended up losing
Sure.
the contract pretty
Yeah.
quick. They pulled it away from us. But like to that point, like what are you doing, or what do you do different that like prepares you for that?
Sure. Yeah. Bulk potato, that's probably the Massillon plant, I imagine in
Oh
Ohio,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Shears
yeah.
plant. That
Exactly.
but they there is I mean, again, it's cheap and heavy. It's dirty. You need washouts to load. There's a lot of
Yep.
core material issues. So like, there's just a lot of drivers that, especially when you're shipping out of North Florida, in April, or Southern Georgia in April, May. Like, there's plenty of options for drivers too. So you've got you can't have a transactional, purely transactional mindset on the carrier procurement side. So I think that's the first thing that's a lot of a lot of 3PLs that are new to it might run into. But so yeah, cultivating those kind of relationships. I mean, the when dealing with rejection specifically, and yeah, that's probably 10% might be maybe on the high side, but it's a weekly occurrence a lot of times. Like
Yeah.
with chip potatoes, there's like this like the fry quality and the sugar content. Like there's all sorts of the chemistry behind like some product might look great, but it won't fry well and it can't be used. So dealing with a rejection, I mean, the typical driver's reaction might be like, well, I'm just gonna, if it's not resolved within a few hours, they're like, I'm just gonna go to a warehouse down the street and unload this stuff and leave. And that's not an option when you got bulk potatoes on a trailer. So,
Yeah.
so really, I think that's what, causes some consternation too. But, we've had a lot of experience with that. That kind of informed a lot of, we're more recently looking to, build and acquire and develop, logistics tech in some different areas, but we've built a platform and it's kind of a tech-enabled service called FreightSOS. That's it started as this stuff happens all the time internally for us, the produce industry, our farm, and depending on the unique circumstance of that rejection, you need like a routing guide for exceptions, and that's kind of how we've positioned ourselves. So with bulk potatoes. We've got some plants not too far from you in North Carolina where, I mean, I can name you draw a 50-mile radius circle around it and name you every livestock, every cattle farm around there. Cause were like, for bulk potatoes, that was one of the like partners we would lean on as livestock producers. So they generally, a lot of them would have the means to unload a bulk trailer. And, you go to a landfill with something like that, like they can do it. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars. Livestock farms will get free feed. You get 42,000 pounds of feed out of it.
Oh, wow.
So that's
So
been
they're probably like
unique
praying,
function.
like hoping that stuff gets rejected. They're like,
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. They love it. They're saving thousands of dollars. Even if the broker or the carrier, you get out as a wash to the farm, you save some money. And it's kind of, there's a sustainability aspect too. Like that farm needs that many less inputs, So it's a positive thing. So that's FreightSOS. What we do, that is our clients range from CPG companies, farms, grocery retailers, all sorts of different partners. And we'll, depending on the unique types of exceptions, we'll kind of, it's a service. Like we have account managers that'll work with them, but then it's also, platform, and there's like a ticket resolution aspect to it too. So we'll help them curate and build like these, the kind of, again, like routing guides for exceptions. So, it's CPG companies that might have like private labeled stuff that you're not going to go dump some, beverage or whatever at a livestock farm.
Yeah.
But there are different, food banks are big partners for us for certain things. There's a wide array of, every situation is unique. So
Definitely.
Oh yeah. We got too much experience in that category though, for sure. So
That's
I have
cool.
a pretty funny story. When I was like younger, I used to live in upstate Rochester, New York, and then my parents would always go and shop at public market, like a public market, and I always thought like, oh, this is legit. We're always getting the fresh stuff. Like I don't know why, but when I was a kid, I always like thought, oh, this is coming straight from the farm or whatever. Then I realized when I got into trucking, my brother had like 7 reefers in Rochester. We were running them, and we would deliver to Wegmans. I don't know if you know of Wegmans in upstate New York, but they're super, super picky about everything, So every time we would deliver, they would always have like rejected ones. We would always have rejected freight, and then they would literally, the broker call us, oh, take this to the public market. And that's when it hit me. I'm like, man, so all this stuff that's rejected at the store is going to the public market. I was like mind blown. I'm like, what the heck, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of like smaller farms, at the market that was selling their own stuff, but a lot of it was like, something that was like rejected stuff or like stuff that stores didn't take.
Absolutely. Every major city, there's a store in the north side of Chicago. It closed down, but Stanley's was the name of it. They had the cheapest stuff. It like, you buy berries there, you got like 12 hours to eat them because they're, about to go bad.
Yeah.
But every city has like a terminal market that, it kind of helps facilitate a lot of that. Yep.
Yeah,
For sure, for
that's
sure.
funny. That this actually reminded me of a story when I was a broker. I knew a guy from my fraternity, and like randomly met up at like some party, and his dad owned like a big grocery store. He has a couple of grocery stores near Chicago, and I told him like, yeah, we have like all these rejected like popcorn boxes, pallets of popcorn like rejected in our warehouse. And like he's like, dude, I'll buy those from you. And he ended up buying them for like just a few dollars. I mean, it was just dirt cheap.
Pennies
And he
on the
ended up
dollar.
selling it at the grocery store.
That's
I mean, the
awesome.
popcorn was good because we were just
Yep.
grabbing it and taking it home anyway. We were eating
Sure.
it, but like there was a lot of
Yeah.
it. So it would have been wasted. And so it's like, yeah, like people ended up like finding various ways. So, but to that point, like with FreightSOS, Adam, for example, let's just say Bob has a driver that has a rejected load, or a brokerage has a rejected load. Like, would they call FreightSOS to like kind of figure out where to dump it? Like, how would that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got kind of a very flexible approach for like how we price with customers too. We'll have like a monthly subscription or retainer, essentially. And just depending on it, we'll scope this out with customers, and we're pretty, nimble, and we'll build these like tailor-made solutions. But depending on if it's a lot of the same thing happening all the time, like we might just build a schedule of fees, for like if this happens, it's X dollars, flip to us, we'll take care of it. Or we'll have like an approach where it's, in excess of so many hours a month. We'll track hours, much like an attorney would. Like as much as I don't want to compare ourselves to pricing like an attorney, like it's kind of like that. So it's like a service where, if you have, there might be some, like we saw a huge, rise in activity when like the Americal shut down recently, the tech issues and stuff, the problems they had. There was a lot of like stranded freight that had expiration dates on it.
Yeah.
That there was like a tremendous amount of disruption with some of that. So those are like, we have the flexibility to like, just you never know when this stuff's going to happen, so it's
Sure.
we try to kind of build our services with that in mind for sure.
Okay.
So
We actually
That's
had
cool.
recently there was a guy that hit me up on Instagram, and he had, I think, like 18 pallets or something, or 15 pallets of frozen bread that was rejected from Harris Teeter. And it was rejected because the expiration date was too close to what they could. They still had like a month of it. But what I ended up doing was literally just posting on like my church groups and all this stuff, and people just showed up and took all that stuff. So it was gone within like a day, and he didn't know what to do with it. The broker didn't know what to do with it. So the broker, like, he was laid over for like I think 2 or 3 days. Like they didn't know what to do with the product. And then he reached out to me, and I'm like, well, we could try that, and posted it up, and got rid of the product.
There's some all sorts of different scenarios, and I'm not a tax professional at all, but what's kind of unique and what we're working on kind of standardizing that event, like when the shipper might be like, to the driver or to the freight broker, like figure out what to do with it, just dump it, like whatever. Like they're assigning that product to you, and then that can be like, if that's donated to a nonprofit, that's there are plenty of scenarios where that's a tax deduction. Like you can actually claim that as a donation. So there's a lot. We're kind of that, but think about it. Like it's a pretty substantial occurrence. The value of that load, I don't know what bread trades for, but it's 5 figures, I'm sure. And so I mean the cash value of that tax deduction might be thousands of dollars too. So we're
the people were so happy. They were like messaging me on Facebook, "Thank you for all this bread. Thank you." I'm like, no problem. The craziest part, they would show up, like people would show up and grab so many boxes. I'm like, how are you going to fit all this? Because it was frozen, right? So if you unfreeze it, it's just going to expand, I'm like, how are you going to fit all this bread into your freezer? Like people don't have that big of a freezer, So I took like I think I took like 2 boxes home, and it was already my freezer was full, and people are taking like 20 boxes. I'm like, dude, this stuff is just gonna explode in your house. But
it happens every day too. It's so that was one thing we kind of spun that off, and as another service, and we've got another recent acquisition, Doc 411. Earlier this year we purchased, and those are 2, like there's all these areas, like we're all about, and proud of the fact we're a traditional broker. Like we are as a DeGroot Logistics, like we want to pay top of market for great people. Like despite all the the wave of like tech innovation and digital freight brokerage stuff out there, like at the end of the day, like shippers, large and small, they need like that kind of partner that can react quickly, that understands how the commodity markets work that they're shipping and operating in. So, we really think that combination, that's like the best case, like the best tools. We're trying to find ways to punch above our weight class too. So our tech strategy, it's heavily about that. But we think that like that's where digital freight brokers don't really do that well, and where their service suffers too, is like what happens when you're, a purely digital model and that happens. Like you get those kind of rejections. They end up being a lot like I think the service level in the industry has gotten worse, actually, because of the rise of that too. So we would absolutely rather have, if you're going to spend X dollars a year on payroll, on carrier sales reps that are experts that know their domain and all that, or on software developers, like I'd rather have the butts in seats that are, just kind of can react pretty quickly too. So yeah.
So Adam, you say you paid top dollar. Bob's looking for someone that pays top dollar. So
we'll
but what are some
off camera?
Can you give us like a kind of an idea what's like right now? Say it's August, right? What's some good, I guess, produce markets that are going to start? Is there still produce going on? Like what areas are still going to be popping for the rest of the year? I guess.
I mean, you're starting to get into the initial the storage commodities. So like potatoes, again, like the northern states, and this would be like Maine, Michigan, Wisconsin, Dakotas, Idaho, all that. So that's about to get going. Apples at Washington, it's like 80% of the apples in the country. Like that's going to get going. Different commodities. I would say the Midwest is rolling right now. It's kind of like Indiana, and a lot of these are like kind of micro, areas. Some are like smaller markets, but August is the peak season. Like where we ship in St. Anne, we're an hour and a half south of Chicago. That kind of, you draw a line across the country. Like that's where a lot of your standard like vegetable commodities are like in season and they're going to. So Michigan's, one's close to us. It's a pretty large producer of a wide range of items. Like that's going to be rolling too. So yeah. And
we had we had Kenny from Ellen Lund come on, and they do a lot of produce, I think, too, right, in reefers. And they were saying that California isn't doing as much, I think, or as it used to. And now I think he saw a big uptick towards like Texas, and like Texas area and everything kind of from Mexico, kind of like what you mentioned too. So pretty interesting to see.
Texas has like a lot of advantages. I mean, their labor availability in the produce, like it's unrivaled. Like every state's, worse off than they are for that. And that's, that's a big deal. Like you can imagine our farm, we're an hour south of Chicago. It's not easy to, like have a readily available supply of teams that'll, cut cabbage, pick peppers, that kind of stuff too. So, but and then they're centrally located, like they can service, both coasts effectively, like somewhat cost effectively from a transportation perspective too. So
sure. How much does like a worker that's cutting cabbage or working in the field like make nowadays? I'm just curious. Like,
so part of our team, is local and lives in the area, and then we participate in an H-2A. It's like a federal farm labor program. So there's like a prevailing wage for that. To the penny, I think it's like $15.75 an hour or something like that. But it's so that shows it's an index that's going to track inflation and stuff. So, and then there's some commodities will pay like piecework. That's standard practice in the industry too for like peppers and stuff. So there's all sorts of so that just kind of depends on productivity for how much you can pick, but. Yeah.
So per piece work, it's how many pieces they collect per
bushel, like cases of peppers or something like that. Yep.
Okay.
So,
very interesting.
Hey, you guys, ever in Illinois, you want to come out and see how many bushels an hour you can pick of peppers? Or more.
That'll make a great video. How much we can collect and how much money we can make on a farm.
I'm looking to make some extra money as a side hustle. So what's better than getting some exercise in out in the sun?
Welcome anytime.
Getting paid and eating vegetables.
Adam, just let us know when it's booming down there. We'll come right at the peak.
It is right now. We'll get you to fly up here. It's booming right now. Yeah.
Bob was just in Chicago over the weekend, so you should have stopped in.
Yeah, I was actually.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Before we go, I was going to ask you before, because we're starting to wrap up. Before we go, what's like do you know any like I mean, that's not a good, I guess, but like a big horror story. Have you ever had where like something goes completely wrong with like certain produce or something like that?
Don't do this to me. Yeah. I don't know. I'd probably repressed all those memories. I'm sure I've got dozens. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, rocks, golf balls in potato plants. There's all sorts of form. You ship a bulk potato loads, like foreign materials is a common thing. A dirty golf ball that somebody, takes their 9 iron in their backyard in the country and hits it into a potato field. That caked in dirt kind of looks like a small potato. So sometimes can get through a process line. So
Oh wow.
we've had some claims incidents from that, but
So
yeah.
Dang.
does
So
the
like
claim
people can buy,
happen?
they think it's a potato, but it's a golf ball. That's crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
when does the
exactly.
claim happen? Does the claim happen when the golf ball gets in the fryer, or like when it's packaged and it's already like bought by a consumer?
Yeah, if it's packaged, that's one thing. I mean,
Does that
you get
happen?
it's our experience is more on the process side. Like,
Okay.
potatoes get chopped up, so there's
Yeah.
blades and
And then all of a
dissection. And
sudden the golf
sometimes it's
ball.
like called, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's all
Ooh.
sorts of fun stuff, but
So
no, wouldn't mind talking a little bit, since we got not much time left, Doc 401,
yeah, I was actually
kind
going
of
to
dive
ask
into
you
that.
about that
That's good.
because I
Yeah.
mean I heard of Doc 401 like a few years ago, and like obviously just because Carrier 401 is so popular, and I'm like, oh, Doc 401, this makes sense. And then it kind of like I saw like nothing was really happening with it, and then you acquired it. Adam, can you kind of tell a story of
Yeah.
like how did that come about? How did you like
Yeah.
just one day? You seem like you're a serial entrepreneur, and you are, because you started with the vegetables. Now you're a logistics company and also FreightSOS. Like, how does this fit into like the whole strategy
Yeah.
behind DeGroot Logistics?
Yeah. So I'll mention no relation between Carrier 401 and Doc 401, but yeah, no, I've known the founder for a long time, like great guy, great team. Was very, from years ago, like very saw the same vision, saw kind of an opportunity, like the data experience. And I think anybody that's, at any level of a 3PL or trucking company can appreciate these things. Like the issues that pop up, like every day we deal with the same things. We're given the same, information or instructions over and over. And this country's got millions of facilities. And every one of them is different. Every one of them has different practices. Every one of them has different, just how you navigate through it. Like, what are the hours? Like, what's all the amenities and things like that. So Doc 101 is really about getting that, like, drivers are trying to plan their lives, their days. And the questions that are top of mind for them are things that brokers don't always consider, or even, some shippers might not. It's like, what's the bathroom situation at the facility I'm going to? Like, what's a lounge like? What's the truck parking? Is overnight parking available? And if you don't know, then you might stay somewhere an hour away just so you can, so that whole like landscape of the facility details, that's what we're all about. So we offer shippers for a subscription, like they can take control of their profile, build it out. We've got close to 100 attributes that, you can fill out as much of it as you want. And we get that in drivers' hands, a day or two before they go to arrive at that facility. First time drivers at new locations, like, you can eliminate a lot of those surprises that, you might have a 2 a.m. drop at a grocery retailer, and you think you got a delivery number, but it's the wrong sequence, and you need one that starts with 2 and something like that. So that's what it's all about. And it gives drivers a way. They can also leave reviews on facilities. So we want to be that guide for shippers that want to be like a shipper of choice. Like, there's a lot of resources expended and talk about that. And we think like the first best way to do that is listen to drivers. Like, do you know what drivers are picking up and delivering to your facility frequently? Do you know what they have to say about your facility? And that's kind of core to the premise of Doc 401 is your facility has a reputation already. But do you know what that is? Do you really know what? And that's getting baked into freight rates all the time. And there's just facilities that have, if you're at average 8 hours to unload somewhere, that's you're paying for that, and you might not know it, and I think that's something that, we're trying to kind of standardize and systematize, but yeah, we're excited about it. And we think this is the other, it's similar it's very different from FreightSOS, but it's similar in the sense that, the gaps, the reason why the the digital freight brokerage model isn't perfect and doesn't get the job done entirely. It's that, it's not like the last mile. This is like the last feet. Like when a driver's on a facility, and where do you go to check in, and what's the terrain there too. So we're really trying to map that out, and really, I mean, it's all about improving drivers' working conditions, and that's really how we want to position ourselves with DeGroot Logistics too, where whatever strategy's been dominant and high performing the last 10 years, like it's going to be a different one going forward. And we think like a driver centric approach, like building relationships, like looking after the needs of drivers is the way to go through any sort of cycle too. So yeah, very excited by that. We just recently this week we're launching the shipper product, shipper profile. We'll have I guess when this is reported, that depending on timing of that, but pretty soon we'll have a relaunch of the driver app. So that'll enable a lot of cool things for the truck drivers out there. So yeah, excited.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now. It looks really, really legit, and it's a really good idea. That way a driver knows what he's getting into. Or not even the driver. I feel like the dispatchers, this might work really good for dispatchers because they can look it up and be like, okay, this is where I'm going. This is how long it's gonna take my driver to unload. And then should I pre-book something for them after that? So that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like I said, close to 100 attributes, and some of these are like, you might have an appointment time. There might be a window, but like, can you drop your trailer early, and will they unload it? There's a multitude of things, and even there's lighting, maneuverability. Like these are attributes in the review and in the profiles too, and there's a large percentage of women drivers.
Basically, a shipper or receiver would create a profile on it and kind of update. Update the stuff, right? And then the drivers or the dispatchers can go in there and kind of leave comments and leave reviews.
They'll be able to search facilities, if it's assuming that's kind of built out as a profile and all, that'll be accessible for sure. Yep. We help we'll work with shippers to transmit that information, those instructions to their carrier network too. But yeah, it's kind of both ways. You'll be able to look up and put in requests. Yeah, there are facilities that don't have profiles, and you want to it's like creating a ticket. We'll start updating that basically. So yeah, free to drivers. Yep, free to drivers.
So it's gonna be
free
to drivers,
companies.
but then the shippers will have to pay a fee to be on there, right?
Correct. Yep. Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Very cool.
I like that. That's a good idea. Are you looking for investors?
We'll talk about that
or influencers.
We'll start with the influencer part. Yeah.
No, but that's really a really good idea. So
we're excited about it.
Bob has a really big trucking truck driver audience. So if you ever need more truck drivers to use it, Bob would be great just to promote that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll get some video reviews on FreightCaviar, I'm sure, at some point in the near future.
Love it.
Yeah.
So just lastly, to finish up, wrap it up, Adam, what's the future plans? Like, what do you envision with DeGroot Logistics, FreightSOS, Dock 401, and the vegetable farm? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, we're family companies. Like we've grown, they're all bootstrapped. That's what we're proudest of. We've got no outside money, no outside investors, and we want to keep it that way. We've got a pretty grand vision for what we see ourselves as in like the top of the second inning, for what we're doing. There's never been more kind of work and opportunity, to kind of drive efficiencies and build relationships. And we want to stay that, kind of people first, traditional 3PL, but provide those services that can kind of solve all these unique kind of exceptions and issues too. So yeah, we're just having fun. It's a insane amount of work, this industry, but it's also, through COVID, through those years, like kind of grateful the fact like there was always, you're in the food shipping, whatever aspect of that industry, there's always work to do too. So we just want to keep growing the team, expert men and women that love working in supply chain and just want to be part of a dynamic organization too. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Adam, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I greatly enjoyed it and we learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, this was great. Appreciate it having me.
Thanks,
Yep.
Adam. Yeah, it was nice meeting you, and I'll
Uh,
stay in touch with you about this
Yeah.
Real quick,
Picking.
one.
Okay.
Adam, if anyone wants to learn more about like FreightSOS or Doc401, should they just go to the websites?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the best way to go. You can find us on different social media platforms too. So yeah, just reach out.
Awesome.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much, Adam.
Thanks, man. See you guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Freight Caviar Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, or if you didn't, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate any feedback. If you'd like to have more Freight Caviar content, go to freightcaviar.com and subscribe to my email newsletter.